Unboxing and unboxing in Java. Conversion of a primitive type to reference type is called boxing, while conversion of the reference type to primitive type is called unboxing. And here we have the list of the classes, which is wrapper classes and the primitive type. These are the primitive type that we have: byte, short, int, long, and we have the reference type, which is the wrapper classes for this primitive type that we have. And the difference that we have this is, here we have byte, which is a keyword that we can use to store the value of byte, and this is a class byte which have the static members and as well as non-static members, which we can use to store value byte, and we can use to manipulate values. And at the same time we have integer, which is the primitive type that we can use to store values. And at the same time we have the wrapper class integer as well. We can also access the members of the class integer, and also both the static members and non-static members. We can access the static members, the non-static members, only if we create an object using the constructor of the integer class, and I will show you later in the okay. Now to store value, let's start with integer class. Integer number equal to 1. At the same time, for the wrapper class we can use integer, let's set number, let's set this to number 1 and number 2 equal to new integer, and we can store the value of 1 in the constructor. Now here is how we can store the value of the primitive type and the reference type, but there is other way that we can use to store this value. Now some people may ask how we can access this value of 1. There is, we can use the variable of this integer, which is number 2, to access the value using the int value like this. And if we print this method int value return the value of the type of the what we have in the constructor. We return the same value that we have in the constructor. Now let's try to print this number 2 and see the output. Okay, by printing this we have 1, and if we can change the value, it will still return the value that we have changed. Now let's try it with 2 again. It will return the value that we have in the constructor. Okay, but there is a simpler way to store this value. We can use the integer class and access, here we have method value of, and inside this method we can add the value or put the value that we want. And when we print the number 2, we can have the value printed in the terminal. Okay, that how we can use to store values in both primitive type and the reference type, which is the wrapper class integer. But in case of boxing and unboxing, let me show you how it works. Now that we have number 1, we have plus number 2. In case of addition, what we have here is a primitive type and what we have here is a reference type. And how it happens is that under the hood, this number 2 will be converted to a primitive type to add the value. Here what will happen is the conversion of a reference type to the corresponding primitive type, which is called unboxing. This will be unboxed and it will be added to this. Okay, this is how it works. And the same thing for the boolean value. Let me set the boolean to boolean. Let's set the value like this, and let's have it 1 2 true. Now we set this value to true, and now let's use the boolean 2 and then have the variable value 2 equal to, and this at the same thing here we can use we can use this to access the static members, which is here we have value, and let's set it to false or whatever true is okay, like this. Okay, and what happened here is that this is a wrapper class value which we store the value true, at the same time the primitive type true. Again, this is how we can use this primitive type and the reference type and how it works, and I will further show you how to use it and some procedure using the collection framework list in the course later. And now using list, here we have list, like this. Let's use integer and set it like this to list, new array list. Okay, now that we have these, let me use this list to add value. For this one I will add 1, okay, like this, and I will use this list to get the value using the index like this, which is index 0. Okay, this is the same thing as writing something like this using the wrapper class. And for this one we don't have problem with this one because we will not write int like this here. We don't have problem with this, but here, and let me change list one, this one to list 2 and this one to list 1, and add some 1 so that to differ from one another. Sorry for this one too. Okay, Here we have, for this one, let me change the value to something like this: new integer 1. But it is better we can use this static member integer dot value of 1. And for this, after returning 0, we have something like this: int value, which will return this value of 1 that we have. Okay, this one is the same thing as the one that we write here. And for this one, since that we dealt with the class integer, this is what we call the conversion of primitive type to reference type. Later I show you the conversion of a reference type to a primitive type, and this is the conversion of the primitive type to reference type. And here, this is a primitive value and it have to be converted since that we have class integer here. Okay, for this one. And there is something I want to show you again. Let me create a method from another class. Let me create, here I have this class boxing and unboxing, but let me delete this and create just a class demo. Java class demo. Okay, here in this class I want to just create two methods. First method, I will create the method using the primitive type, and the second method I will create it using the reference type, and both will return a value. And this method we will use this method to sum some values here in this class. Okay, now let me just simplify this one to just list like this, and then have arrays dot, I will use this static member of the array class to store values that we have to be sum to 1, 2, 3. Imagine we want to sum these values. Okay, if you want to sum these values, and we have to, let me create method to sum this value. We will start with the public int sum, and in this class we will receive a list of items as a parameter, and then sum the values. Okay, first we have integer counter. We have counter, and we will set this counter to 0, and you can use it to sum the value, and use a for loop to, here we have for loop, and then have list to list to list. Okay, and inside this we can use a counter variable, counter plus or counter equal to counter plus list. Okay, and whatever we have here during the iteration through the list, if we have 1, it will add this 1 to the value that we have here, and for the first time we will have 0 here, since that we set the variable to 0. The first time we will have 0, and if we have 0, this will be the first value that we will have in the iteration, and this value will be added to this counter, and it will continue the iteration, adding each value to the counter. And what we have to do here is return what? Return counter. And let's test this method to see if it is working. And what I want you to consider here, we have this as integer, only the here that we have this integer class. Here we have integer, the same thing we have here, the same thing here we have integer. And let me test this method and see what we can. Okay, here is the class. Now let me create a class. Let me create a constructor demo equal to new demo, and use this demo to access the value of sum. Okay, now let me pass list to this. Okay, this will return a value of integer. Let's store the result here and then print the result and check if our method is working correctly to continue with our example. Here we have 6. That shows that our method is working correctly. And let me, this we have for the primitive type, and let me have the same something like this for the reference type. Here we have integer, and then here at the same time here integer. We will have integer also here. Okay, now this will return integer, and let me name this method as sum integer, which is for the wrapper class. We have two different methods here, and for the integer and the wrapper classes. And now let's use this method here to give some example. But before, let me return this demo. Okay, since this our list that we have this list of integer, which is not the one that we have in the wrapper class. For this one, the values have to be unboxed, and the value will be added together, and then later the value will be boxed automatically to return the answer. Let me show some example here. Okay, now we have sum, and then we created another integer result. To this we have result 1, and this result 2 equal to demo dot sum integer. and we can also pass list to this one at the same time. Okay, so now if we can't access any members here because it is returning the integer, and we cannot have access to the member because it is primitive type. What it return is not a wrapper class, so it will not return any. We cannot access any members, but here we can use to access the members, that the difference. And for this value, imagine to say that if you can sum the values at the same time here, let's say that here we have plus this demo for the sum integer. So at the same time, okay, sorry, I deleted the object variable. Okay, at the same time, to sum this will be on box. This is conversion of the primitive type to add it to this value, which is a primitive type, which will return a primitive type, and this will return integer. And in terms of comparing these values, we cannot use these. Imagine that we have the same demo dot sum integer list. Here we have the same type, reference type. We cannot use equal to compare this. Even that we compare it, we shall have the correct answer, but it is not a good way to compare this because it is reference type. We can use equal, and then we can use this equal method and then pass this value here. This is how we can compare these two method or two values of this method, which is return. Okay, this is all about the boxing and unboxing in this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. To have more of our videos on programming, you can subscribe to our channel.